Okay. Hey,
but
listen.
keep that. Wait, with the best stuff you're wasting if you don't put it on. But anyway, go ahead.
I'm gonna keep it. Here's the thing. I cut this all up. It's gonna be great because nobody can watch an hour. You know, I cut it into 40 segments. Anyway, hey, what's up, America? Welcome to Good Night, America. I'm America's sweetheart, Eric Ryan. Today's guest. If you don't know who he is, you're a fucking idiot. Well, I'm going to tell you anyway, because that's what I do on this show. He's a journalist, a novelist, a cultural critic. He's the co-founder of Spy Magazine, which was one of the most important magazines of all time. I don't know if you know this, Kurt. You're pretty famous for calling Trump all the way back in the 80s a short-fingered vulgarian. So you guys have been warring forever. Why? Because you're ahead of the times. You hosted Studio 360 on NPR for what, 20 years, right?
Yep.
Something like that.
Correct.
And you were the author of 2 absolutely essential nonfiction books. They should be required reading. Americans don't read. But if we did, everybody should read Fantasyland and also Evil Geniuses. I have, you know what? This has nothing to do with nothing. You're my favorite nonfiction writer, Kurt. No, my favorite fiction writer? Kurt Vonnegut. I got a thing for Kurts who write books. Interesting.
Midwestern Kurtz, who write books.
That's right. He's from Indianapolis. Okay. I want to talk about Spy Magazine for a second. So you have been warring with Trump for 40 or 80s, early 80s?
38, going on 39 years. I'm not warring, but I say I'm a close student of Donald Trump's. Yes, I have been on our first issue of Spy Magazine. I was just sending a thing from it to somebody earlier today. First issue of Spy Magazine, the cover story was the 10 most embarrassing New Yorkers. We didn't rank them, but Donald Trump was among them. It's amazing to see what he said and what we quoted him saying in that first issue, including, for instance, it's incredible that he said, if I were president, I were doing the negotiations to have nuclear arms control with the Soviet Union. I could learn everything there is to know about missiles in an hour or two and have a treaty with them in no time. I mean, that's what I'm saying. The idiot has just been on repeat for 40 years. So yes, he was as a bully and an ostentatious rich guy and all that he is and what he was then in New York, where nobody knew him outside New York, really.
Yeah.
And he was a great character for our little and then not so little satirical magazine that we started back in '86. Yep. I've been at it. I stopped for a while. I didn't pay much attention to Donald Trump for, the Apprentice years. But he comes back and I'm dragged back into the Trump business.
It's a good business to be in, I guess, if you want clicks. So I was going through some of the digital issues of the magazine, and you made fun of. You had a couple sections. One is you broke down. You did his the hand signals because he's been talking with his hands this entire time, and you said what the things mean when his hands do what. Then there was another one where it was a cartoon where you're making fun of him for being an absentee father. So I guess the question here is, were you making fun of him in identifying him as a shitty con man back then for the same reasons that you dislike him now? Or is President Trump a character that he invented back then? Has he been consistently kind of the same hateable guy? Did he ever come across as human?
No, he didn't. He was effectively the same guy. He was, among other things, the thing that struck me most intensely and immediately, and is still obviously so true, is, I've known a lot of people seeking attention, seeking celebrity, getting celebrity, famous people of various kinds. I have never met or seen or spent time thinking about anybody who is so desperate, like an addict is desperate for drugs, for attention and media attention, that he was that way then, he's that way now. Also, a bully, an insecure guy, a desperately insecure about like what he doesn't know and pretends he knows everything. And, the other thing that he was then, as he was said when he was even younger than when we were looking at him, in his early 40s, he'd said, my whole idea of what I want to do is, I thought about being in show business, but my father's in real estate. I'm going to combine them. I'm going to combine the business that makes money with show business and just make everything a show. Here we are. So no, it was every bit of it was there. Now he was able to complete a sentence that made sense back then, and he kind of you could see him. And if you look back now, given how he speaks in public now, he kind of kept everything kind of quiet, and he would complete sentences, and he would go like this, and and like, I'm not a monster. I mean, he kind of kept the shit in the bag more in terms of public persona and public performance, even though privately he was just as big of a con man, bully, cheater as he is now. And back then, when frankly the rest of the media were just like, he's great, yeah, he's amazing, he's this guy, he's rich, he's wonderful, he's a playboy, that was his coverage. And there was Spy out there saying, no, he's an idiot and an asshole, and let's show you, let's explore why, and not just making fun of him, but let's assign investigative journalists to like track down his imminent bankruptcies before he became bankrupt, all of it, so yeah, he was the same. He is, I think he was seeking, the love he had ever had, as we learned from his niece, Mary Trump's book. And he was trying to fill this unfillable hole with attention and media and people saying he's great and people telling me he's great and all that. And it didn't work, as it so often does with people who have those kinds of values and are seeking and living in a life where there's no meaning or no purpose other than like, no, come on, suck me off, basically, or tell me I'm great or whatever it is. And so because it hasn't really fulfilled him, he's angrier than ever. And he's 79 almost, right? He's getting close to the end, and he's angrier because of that, like old people, certain kind of old person does. And especially, sadly and horribly, people with certain kinds of dementia get, what they call sundowner rage every now, where they just get angry about everything. So that's where we are. Same guy, just, 80 years old and still unfulfilled, even though he has more, he's more famous than any human, I don't know, ever, maybe, I guess,
It must be wild. Listen, we're a country that loves gimmicks and spectacle, but it must have been wild for him to go, man, if I lean into this insanity thing, it could bring me all the way to the White House. And it did. That's so fucking weird.
It is. And, every 4 years he would tease, I'm going to look into the presidency things, really starting in 88. We talked about it in Spy at the time. And it was a joke. He was a joke, and it was a joke, and it was a joke, and it was a joke. But then he realized, because Americans had a critical mass of stupidity and belief in magical crap had reached this critical mass, thanks in large part to, well, as I write in Fantasyland, to the late 60s and to the internet. He said in his genius, in his brilliance, in his like con man, I know when to strike, I think he realized come 2012 and then 2015 when he ran, like, no, this is my time. This actually could happen. And if nothing else, it'll make me more famous and be good for my brand and all that. And then like, wow, it worked. Let's keep going. Let's, so does he want power? Sure. He wants power like, a king in a comic book has power, but he doesn't, of course, want power to do anything other than make himself more powerful and more famous. That's so yeah. Not that I'm any defender of Hitler or Stalin or Mao, but they actually had an idea, a set of ideas that they were pursuing horrible, the horrible ideas that they were pursuing for
their evil was clearly aimed at something.
Well, their totalitarianism and authoritarianism had a point at various points. And he's using their playbook, not that he in his stupid instinctive way of, I guess, totalitarians and authoritarians, but it's really, he doesn't, and he has obviously bigotries and hatreds and resentments, and that so did they, but he doesn't even pretend to have really a thing like Nazism or communism or socialism or whatever.
No, he's just gone full sociopath. It's an interesting strategy. It's working so far. It's not but he's where he is.
No,
So-
he is. And it is working. And you keep thinking, as I've thought, I remember like August of 2015, he says he starts trashing John McCain, on a stage. I think, oh, that's done. He's done. He's
No,
just
it
gone
doesn't
too
matter.
far. Almost 10 years later. Nope.
No, this is the thing. I used to think about the United States, that there would be some line. Like, listen, say what you want about us, but we love children and we love veterans. Well, 22 veterans kill themselves a day. Nobody does a goddamn thing about it. Schools get shut up all the time. Nobody does a goddamn thing about it. So as long as you have a cult of personality, you can do whatever the fuck you want. And half the country is going to go, no, that makes sense. And no, he's got a point. You know what I mean? It's very disappointing. So I do want to get into the two books, but Spy Magazine, something occurred to me when I was reading it last night that sort of hurt my soul. In Evil Geniuses, you make the argument that the right was losing the culture war, so they sort of doubled down on this economic thing that they could touch people's soul with. As I'm reading Spy, in the 80s and 90s, that is clearly like, okay, you attack both sides, but it's very left, very counterculture, dirty comics, well-written satire. That's traditionally a very leftist approach to power, speaking truth to power. I don't think the left would like this magazine today. I think they'd be offended by it. And that's weird. So it's like we had the culture war and we set ourselves on fire. Well, why would we do that?
Well, I mean, it's an interesting question. And I mean, the various role reversals of the left and right in various ways. Yeah. Whereas, as you say, the left was all about, speaking truth to power and all that, no matter if they were good liberals or not, for sure. Right. I mean, it's missteps happen, I mean, and again, I think it was, the kind of thing you're talking about, the spy hatred, spy would have been canceled. Sure. And I still get people, objecting to things we said or did about Bill Clinton or Hillary Clinton 30 years later, judging us by the entirely pro-Hillary thing that is required today. So it would have been problematic, and it's one reason I'm glad I was young when I was and did it when we did it, because it would be a whole different thing today, for sure. Now, I do think that, again, when we say the left, I mean, and again, I think the last few years after peak of that, and again, I try not to say woke because whatever, for all the reasons you're not supposed to say woke, but we can stipulate that we can use that and everybody knows what we mean. That had its peak, and then to me it was already by, I don't know, a couple of years ago. Clearly, it was subsiding. It has, and losing this election over woke issues in some measure. I'm not saying how much, but in some measure, I think has reduced the influence of that part of the left, of the cultural part of the left, and good, because it's, as you've said and suggested, it'll make it easier to win next time.
It's so bizarre, though. If you look at sort of the history of modern satire, I think it probably starts with the Harvard Lampoon and the National Lampoon, and then you sort of get into Mad and Spy and Cracked to a certain degree. Just like satirical, like somebody said that this was as funny as Mad and as well reported as the New Yorker. Well, then, right? I mean, it's not bad, right? Then you get into, so this goes through the 90s, and then the 90s and the early 2000s, you have less intellectual, but like a sort of a hardcore approach to comedy with Jackass and early South Park and Family Guy, and very satirical, very like who gives a fuck, Girls Gone Wild. Like it was nuts. And then, so this is ostensibly the left, because the right wouldn't embrace this weirdo counterculture, nudity, fucking making fun of people. But wokeness comes from the left. So it is really like we just started eating ourselves, and we opened the floodgates to our demise. It's so fucking weird.
Well, another way, as I talk about in Fantasyland, that we opened ourselves to our demise, that the right took over a thing from the left. A thing from the left, starting in the 60s and 70s and through the 80s and 90s, was this relativism, right? That the conservatives at the time, the William Bennett's of the world, hated, which is to say, well, you can't say this is the truth. You can't say science is more true than, what the indigenous people of wherever believe, and no, it's all equally true and there's no real truth. Well, I mean, that became empowered, embraced by certain parts of the right, became a big part of Trumpism, really. And like, no, we can believe what we want. I believe what I feel. Well, that was a kind of thing of the feature of the cultural left back in the day. And then it dribbled out of the campuses and, I mean, somehow made its way into MAGA. And like, there is no empirical reality. You're Bobby Kennedy and you think like, no, let's stop having vaccines and all that is, I mean, the left in its broadest sense, and the campus left, and all of that cultural relativism that came out of that is triumphed as a thing of the right. Yeah. So yeah, it is weird. I agree, but I still think that part, which is to say the I don't know, the most extreme cultural left, the part that I'm sure we would agree is not so great in many ways, is not running the organized left, the Democratic Party, the institutional left. It's it's an influential, whatever it is, 15% of the United States, of 10%, 15% of, and therefore a third or a quarter, let's say, or third of the left. If we're half left and half right, so, I think, it's been kept in check in the way that, good political dynamic balances are, as the right used to be, right? As there used to be a sane right, there was a fringe right, and the fringe right were kept in the fringe. And, Barry Goldwater and William F. Buckley didn't allow the John Birchers to take over their party. And like, okay, we're conservative, but you people are freaks. And then they didn't, so far the left has not been that, although, as you're saying, we paid the political price for even letting him for the fact that they had as much influence in the discourse as they did. And as you're suggesting as well, that allowed the, kept giving gifts to the right, like, win.
Why would we do that? It's so stupid. All right, listen,
I believe in free speech.
Yeah, fuck me.
Except
all right, so I don't want to ask you questions you've been asked a million times, but I do think it's important that we go over the Fantasyland thing. So I love that people think Americans are recently crazy, but you say, no, we've always been batshit crazy. And a lot has to do with from day one, the Pilgrims landing with their lunatic fanaticism, religious bent. So can you just sort of run through your thesis?
Yes. The Pilgrims, your fellow Massachusettsians,
the
original white Massachusettsians.
That's right, baby.
We're a cult. We're a cult of Puritans, which is a fairly new, 100-year-old religion at that time and pretty new. And they were not only the hardcore Puritans, but they were so hardcore they couldn't stay in England, right? They moved to Europe. Finally, they moved to Holland, and no, that won't work. We got to go to this place, whatever it is, where we've never been, but we can make up stories about. And they did. And so they came here to, fight the devil, because those Indians are devils, and to wait for Jesus and that's who they were. So you had that up there in New England, and then you had the people in Virginia who were not that nutty on the religious grounds, but really thought and were convinced that they could all get rich because there's gold just on the ground, and it'll be great, and we'll have all the land we want, and we'll grow everything, and it's El Dorado. It'll be great. So that's what you had. Those, for the first 50, 100 years of European settled America, that's what you had. So yeah, we come by it. That's how we came by it, and then there's a good side of this, right? I mean, then America collected all kinds of people who were dreamers and doers and reinventors and adventurers, and great. And that's part of like how America did become amazing in so many ways. But this like con man business thing and this religious nuttiness are there at the core. And for a long time we kept it all in check, and
yeah, the
grown-ups were in charge, and it was okay. And then slowly but surely, the last 60 years, it got out of control.
So okay, believing in unbelievable shit does get you a lot. It gets you to go west and try to find gold in the face of, unknown terrain and Native Americans and whatever. It's crazy. But if you want, this experiment in democracy and the iPhone and a cheeseburger where the buns are glazed donuts, you kind of have to have a country full of absolute fucking lunatics. But to your point, they were always kept in check. I don't think we're being kept in check anymore.
No,
This is the issue.
no, exactly. And again, I mean, it's one of the, all these unintended consequences. It is in significant part, as I argued in Fantasyland, an unintended consequence of the 60s, man, and the 70s and New Age. And like, okay, it's all great. This is part, it's all beautiful. And you have your truth and I have mine. If we meet, it's beautiful. Yeah. Well, no, when it becomes immoderately out of control, and when like anti-establishmentism, which is a good thing in moderation. Immoderation is good in moderation, right? But when anti-intellectualism and anti-elitism and anti-establishmentism, which are part of the American spirit, go crazy, like anything else, eating, great. Eating, twice the calories that you can afford to eat, not such a good thing. Drinking, fine, until you become an alcoholic. I mean, all of it. And yeah. And so these American things, these defining things in the American character, got out of whack.
Do you think the idea of American exceptionalism is born of this idea that we can just believe whatever reality we want? Because I just find it so bizarre that we continue to say, oh, we're the freest, we're the richest, we're the smartest.
Yeah.
But we have the internet. How the fuck can we still believe this?
I know. Well, that's the thing. And the internet too I go back to the first lines of Charles Dickens's A Tale of Two Cities. It's the best of times. It's the worst of times. It's the time of idiocy. I'm paraphrasing here. It's the time of miracles, of scientific stuff, all that. Well, that's where we are. And it's true of the internet, right? I mean, it's like every piece of information, instantly, science, this, that, history, it's all there in your pocket. It's amazing. And it's the means by which people who believe in crazy things and untrue things can find each other and increase the the aggregate belief in craziness and untruth. So it's tough, and it's where we are. And it's like most technology. It's like nuclear fission, right? Yeah, it can blow us up, or it can give us power cheaply forever. AI, it can destroy us, or it can, give us utopia. I mean, what are you going to do?
Why is it so complicated? I don't believe in simulation theory, but you got to, at some point, this has to be like a custom-made dystopian nightmare for you. This guy that you've been attacking is an idiot con man, snake oil salesman since the dawn of fucking your magazine is now in charge. Oh man.
Well, I'll tell you, I had a period back when I was 17, 18, 19, where I took a lot of LSD. And so when, the experiences I had of perceiving reality and whatever, I don't know, a dozen times I tripped. And, I mean, you would go, and people say, oh, that's very trippy. Oh, that's trippy. Yeah. Well, I'm telling you, this is like, I don't believe really in acid flashbacks. But like the whole Donald Trump thing is like, I'm glad I don't take those drugs these days. I really am.
Do you think there's any credence to the so when you're on psychedelics? I'm a psychedelic fan. Do you believe that there's any more truthiness when you're fucked up? Do you think maybe you're tapped into something that we don't?
I do. I'm grateful that I got through it without becoming psychotic permanently. Yeah, no, I absolutely do. And I agree with people like Steve Jobs in that it has the ability to put you in touch with different kinds of understanding of reality and the truth, for sure, no question.
And it really feels real. I mean, if it's not real, fucking, I don't know.
Well, yeah, but again, I mean, speaking of psychedelics, the first time I ever took drugs, and it was mescaline, and it was actual mescaline, I think, and it was fantastic and perfect. Never quite as good, actually, but anyway, I was walking home after this night of mescaline, and there was walked past a Mary statue in somebody's yard, and And Mary like moved, and she moved and waved to me or whatever she did. And now, if I were a different kind of person, rather than the 17-year-old I was, I would have gone, "Oh Jesus, yes, I would have come to Jesus." I didn't. I thought, "Oh man, I'm still hot."
Right.
Well,
that's yeah, exactly. That's why I don't understand the bad trip. Just in your head, go, "Oh, I'm fucking on drugs," and that didn't really happen, and move on. I don't know.
I know. Well, you and I are mentally healthy and prepared to deal with the psychedelic experience, I guess.
I suppose so. Okay, so Americans, we're genetically predisposed to believing in the unbelievable. We like gimmicks and spectacle. We invented Hollywood, so we know all of this. What happens in the 60s? Let's talk about evil geniuses, because you make the argument that what we're going through, it wasn't by accident, but by specific design, and they planted the seeds beginning in the 60s, correct?
Well, I would say at the end of the 60s. I mean, there was, since the New Deal, there was these right-wing people in a small way, but Milton Friedman and his predecessors, who really believed, oh, we've become a socialist nation because we now have Social Security, or or public schools, or all of it. There were those people, and they were a fringe. Then, when the late 60s happened, and the anti-war movement and the leftist movement of the 60s, and civil rights, and oh, we love Ho Chi Minh, if we're new left college kids, and all that freaked them out. And they thought, oh my God, it's happening. We're going to have a socialist revolution in the United States of America. And we have bombings, and we have so many, starting in 70, 71, the end of the 60s, a lot of bombings, a lot of political bombings of, banks and fires and draft offices and all of it. And it was like, whoa, my God, we gotta stop this. And so they got together in a panic, but in a strategic way, and said, okay, we have to defend ourselves, and we have to create a whole counter establishment of the right, because we've been complacent for basically since the New Deal and World War II, and we've got to, so they did that, and it was successful. And 10 years later, they had Ronald Reagan as president, and they just kept going. They kept winning. They kept their eye on the ball, because they had a very simple ball to keep their eye on, which is lower taxes, less regulation, lower taxes, less regulation. That was it. If you're a Milton Friedmanite, right wing economic libertarian guy, that's your thing, and you don't care. I mean, and so you could be socially liberal. You could be, as my parents were, pro-choice, pro-conservation, but like keep our taxes as low as possible person, and let's also contain the Soviet Union, and have a powerful military presence abroad, all that. So it was simple. And then they convinced many people who weren't right wingers, like the organizations and groups that helped get Bill Clinton elected. Like, oh no, basically. So I mean, Democrats effectively and Republicans in the beginning in the 70s, and certainly in the 80s and 90s, didn't really disagree about economics too much. We the Democrats threw out the labor unions basically as the basis of the party, and everybody like, hey, we're all doing well, aren't we? We affluent, college educated people. Yeah, we are. Good. Let's keep going. So that's what happened basically, and the short, crude, but I think true view of what happened politically then in the 90s is, okay, if you're a working class person, and a white working class person especially, you say, okay, these parties, none of them care about us economically. They're hollowing out and wrecking our communities in the Rust Belt, and we're losers in what's happening in America between automation and outsourcing of jobs and all that. But these guys, which is to say the Republicans, who'd been ever since the civil rights movement, been using that as a way to try to turn the South, for starters, into Republican land. So they kind of don't like the same people that we do, and economically, the Democrats and Republicans are the same. So I'm going with these guys. that's what happened. And here we are.
They're much better at fear mongering, and they're much better at the fear of the other, the clickbaitification. So I guess from your perspective, do you think there's any hope for the left going down the current, like trying to appeal to intellect rather than emotion? Because I
think you got to appeal to emotion too. I think, and again, Chris Murphy, senator from Connecticut, who's come out as like a economic lefty and like kind of cultural moderate, and that's to me the way to go. And he said, and I think, and he says, for instance, to your point about like, don't be too smart for the room, don't be so precious and everything, you liberals, when you're talking. Like he says, we love our solutions, we love our policy solutions, and so we spend 80% of our time talking about our policy solutions, and maybe 20% of our time talking about the bad guys who are trying to hurt you and take your money away, and just being tough and being emotional. And it should be reversed. It should be like 80% talking about like, stop these oligarchs, stop these Elon Musks, all 80%, like, and 20% like are nice, good, true policy proposals. People, you just have to, play to the room correctly and use emotion and even, dare I say, demagoguery when it works.
Oh man. So the thing okay. Even a broken clock is right twice a day. A blind squirrel finds a nut. The whole thing about Trump that
I've never heard the blind squirrel finds a nut. I'm going to start using that.
Yeah, please do. I mean, let's attribute it to me though. So I do like, so this whole time growing up, I'm a political science major. I was taught that there's checks and there's balances, and, doing things at government's kind of like turning around a Titanic. It takes time. You got to negotiate. As it turns out, no. If you're out of your fucking mind, you just pass 1 million executive orders, you can get shit done. That's sort of disappointing because I don't like the shit that he's getting done, but he did prove that you could get shit done, which what if he was doing that for good? Wouldn't that
Well, no, it's true. And the thing is, I often think about, assuming, he isn't going to be the president for the next 15 years or whatever. And assuming there is a reaction and there's a political reaction, we have enough of Democratic apparatus to get us back in there. And I think we do still. Getting harder by the minute, but still, I think we do. I wonder about like, okay, these like non-insane Republicans, like when they suddenly say, oh, a president can't be prosecuted for any crimes in office. Oh, executives have this enormous new degree of power and executive. Okay, that works for you and him. But what happens when that's President AOC or President whoever, like, wow, that's not going to be so good for your side, is it? So, it's amazing. And again, it's not entirely new. It's just new to America. I mean, you look at, the Philippines, you look at Hungary, you look at all the, these, it happens before, of like putting on a good show and doing this crazy stuff and like, and violating norms, right? I mean, everybody kind of assumed the norms are the same as the laws and it's all, you got to do it this way. And these are the guardrails. Well, no, if that isn't the law, like, and maybe if it is, I mean, to your point, I mean, once like try the crazy, shameful, brazen stuff. Boy, it works. Okay, fine. I'm going to keep doing this. That was not a thing that these institutions did for 200 years when they were the grown-ups.
My concern is, even if it is President AOC one day, I think we are so beta as a party that it's going to be like, we're not going to send him to the gulag. We're going to be like, just, okay, don't do it again. Next time you're in power, listen, serious. No iPad tonight if you do this shit. If you destroy democracy again, and I really they're so far ahead of us in aggression and not giving a shitness that we just don't seem to be leaning into this at all. But and again, it's not something I would recommend, but I see that it works. And at some point, stop running up the middle, maybe
well, I mean, again, one of my points in Evil Genius is not about this stuff. Whoops. My alarm says I got to go. I mean, there are lessons to be learned from both how the smart people, the rich people, the right for 50 years, built this thing. But there's lessons to learn from Donald Trump. There just is. And from the show and from, as you're saying, less deferential, like, oh no, can't we all just get along? Okay, fine. Don't do it again. All that stuff. I agree, both in terms of getting elected and, I mean, it's not, I don't know, it's bring the right weapons to the game or to the war or whatever. And it's like I recently started boxing some, not learning to box, but like just doing it to train. I love it. But like I was thinking the other day, like, what if it was in my fists? I wouldn't even try it. And really, they're doing it with their fists, and we're still no, we're wearing the gloves.
This is why I know this gets conspiratorial thinking, and I don't like to say it out loud, but I'm going to anyway. I almost think, you know how the Harlem Globetrotters always play the same team? They play the Washington Generals or something, and they always win. But ostensibly it's a competitive basketball game, but they're getting a paycheck from the same company. That seems that the Democrats lose all the time. They're like jobbers in wrestling. Like they go out to lose the superstar, and then they go back to the back and like, hey, here's your paychecks. It almost has to be that, because we're losing so goddamn often.
Well, but we're not losing all the time. And no, don't make it worse than it is. I mean, we lost to Trump by 1.5%, a tiny amount historically. We won a lot of Senate seats. The Senate seats that lost did much, much better than Harris. I mean, it's not over yet. I mean,
you're giving me hope. I like that.
Well, it's true. I mean, I mean, it sucked. He's horrible. He's dangerous. It's a new game, and again, and I think people are starting to wake up, and even the Democrats are starting to wake up, because it's not lost, but you can't pretend it's 1994 anymore.
We got to get this oligarchic. Yeah, we got to get money out of politics. I know that's impossible, but as soon as lobbying entered the game, you should have thrown the baby out with the bathwater. Not something like 98% of elections are won by the candidate that spends the most money. That is not democracy. That is oligarchy. You're just paying. You're buying people.
But again, on the other hand, Elon Musk and fellow people on the right,
I know,
they lost one Supreme Court seat in Wisconsin, pouring in $40 million. It doesn't do the trick. She wins by 9 points or whatever it was.
That's the 2%. There's an exception to every rule. So I know you got to go. Are you having dinner? Anybody important?
I am meeting somebody for drinks. Nobody important. An old friend, both literally old and somebody I've known for a long time. And what am I doing then? And then I'm coming home and Netflix and chill, as they used to say. I don't know.
That means sex.
Well, but
good for you.
I know it means it. But what?
What do you drink? What are you gonna go?
I drink. Actually reminds me. I was supposed to buy new gin. I ran out of gin. I have become a martini drinker late in life. One martini a night.
Have we talked about gin? I know. Listen,
sure, quickly, but we can talk about gin.
Brockman's. Have you had Brockman's?
I maybe been served it once, but no, not really.
It's $25. And listen, I'm a size queen when it comes to, I like spending money on booze, but it's $25. It's the best gin in the world. And I don't even think it's particularly close. And I'm a gin drinker.
25 for how big of a bottle? That's cheap.
$7.50. Like the normal, it makes no sense. I mean, listen, with the tariffs, it's English, so it's going to go up to $800.
Brockman's. Okay.
So this is the world's greatest gin and tonic. Listen to me now.
It's better than Hendrick's, for instance.
Exponentially better. And I know really? I love Hendrick's. I love Hendrick's too. The best gin and tonic in the world is Brockman's Fever Tree tonic water in a lemon. It tastes like licking God, assuming God exists. I don't believe in God, but if they did and I licked her, I think it would taste like that.
I'll try it. I've stopped drinking gin and tonics. I just drink gin, but yeah.
All right, do yourself a favor though. Fever Tree tonic. Don't skip. Don't do Schweppes or anything.
I don't want tonic. I don't drink tonic.
I know, but I'm saying someday.
Okay, I serve tonic to friends. Okay, Fever Tree tonic.
Okay, have a little sip. All right, listen, Kurt. As usual, you've been fantastic. I hope you come back when you have another book.
I will. Well, you called me in an email exchange this week. You called me dear, and that really endeared me to you. So yes,
that's what I'm. Well, that was the point of that. Yes.
Well, there you go. As I told you, I turned in that book I was working on this week, Monday. So that'll come out, and then if not before, come on and talk about it.
Beautiful. I'm looking forward to it. It's a work of nonfiction, though, right?
No, it's a work of fiction.
I'm sorry.
It's a work of fiction that is kind of be marketed as the fictional, sequel to Fantasyland and Evil Geniuses, as set in the future.
Here's Fantasyland too. If everybody should buy these books. I mean it. Like you were just so correct about everything. It's pretty striking. You must be. One more question. Are you happy or sad that you're so right about everything?
It's a weird mixture. I wish I weren't right, but
here you are.
Here I am.
All right, man. Have a gin martini.
A pleasure as before.
Yeah, man. All right, we'll be in touch.
Okay.
Goodbye.
See ya. And then the question is, why are all these people who this guy isn't helping, doesn't want to help, won't help, is making life worse for right now, think he's great? Well, maybe they'll learn their lessons one by one, you know?
How many? Okay, with the lesson learning to me just seems like it's not coming. You think because
Well,
rational,
you know, the lessons learned don't happen until it affects you, period. And, you know, we saw that when women suddenly said, what the fuck? I can't get an abortion because of this guy. Then that affected them. When them being laid off from my meat packing plant or my car plant or whatever because of these tariffs, what? Prices are going up. He was supposed to bring them down. What? You know, until it affects you, I mean, it doesn't affect you. And most people are, I don't know, most people, half of Americans, let's say, don't pay attention to politics. So, you know, what are you going to do?
So I think that, again, that's a very rational argument once it affects you, that you should jump to the other side. But I think it's a lot like the doomsday cult members when they say, absolutely, May 12th, fucking it's over, right?
Yeah.
And then May 12th comes and they go, oh, well, you know what? If I look at the numbers again, it's not that it's not going to end. It's just that I simply miscalculated.
Yes. Well, yes, there are cultists, and there are, as I call them, residents of Fantasyland, and you know, nothing's going to change their minds no matter what. And like, they keep, no, it's next June 24th.
Yeah.
You know, but you know, again, I'm speaking in rough estimates here, but you know, half the people voted for Trump. Half of those are those people. Half of those are nuts. You know what's fun?
Every time you think that you've got them cornered, go to the story on foxnews.com and then read the comment section. And it's like, oh, that's how they spin it. Because right now, you know, everything's crashing, but it's just, it hasn't given enough time. You know, it's just more time.
But again, I believe that economics are the reality slap that make it hard to keep up the bullshit. You know,
I mean, hope it's not too late by the time that they realize.
Well, that's the worry. You know, that's the worry. And as people watch just as many or more. Actually, Republicans have 401ks and the rest as you know, Democrats. And by the way, also, I mean, the number of people whose livelihoods are dependent on imports and exports, it's vast. It's huge. It's like, I don't know. Again, I'm just speaking out of my ass here, but but not entirely out of my ass. My brain is connected to my ass. A third of the people, or half the workers, are whether it's, you know, in all kinds of ways, agriculture, manufacturing, fashion, I mean, every kind of way. And among my friends, but among people in Nebraska that I was with last weekend, it's all, you can't just suddenly say, nope, imports and exports don't matter. We're going to do it all here. Well, okay, maybe in 5-10 years, while you're bringing the GDP down to, you know, Argentina level. But anyway, we'll see. We'll see.
And it also goes like, okay, so I was talking to my business partner today. I'm like, we're both bourbon drinkers. And then you go, well, listen, at least bourbon's made in Kentucky. But you know what they're going to do? If you can't ship bourbon out, they're going to go, all right, well, now it's $10 more expensive because no fucking Canadians. Like, no matter the thing, it's going to have a negative effect on somebody somewhere. It's not going to be the consumer go, oh, shit, well, at least bourbon stayed the same price. Nothing is going to stay the same. Interwoven. And so the fact that this guy, I don't even think he doesn't not understand it. I don't know what the fuck is going on.
One of my senators, and I say that, well, because I have 4 senators in a sense, because I spent half my time in Connecticut and half my time in New York. Chris Murphy in Connecticut gave in the last 2 days there's a video of it. He's online with it, explaining, and I hadn't thought of this and I hadn't realized this, why he's doing this stupid thing, which is to say, just crazy across the board, excessively high tariffs.
Yeah,
he has been talking about this for 40 years. You know, back when we were doing Spy Magazine and covering him, he was talking about tariffs. You know, and he just has it in his head. He you know, I don't know. This is why aren't we doing tariffs? Of course, because, and he says that because he's the man who makes deals. He goes bankrupt, you know, 6 times, but he makes deals. And so that's what he sees tariffs as. Oh, it's just deals. And I'll just tell these people I'm charging them $1 gazillion and then we'll make a deal. Well, okay. That worked okay in 1900, didn't work so well in 1930 when it hastened the Depression. But so he thinks that's what you got to do. We're just been afraid to do that. Well, he's a moron.
Yeah.
And again, it's an important part of understanding who he is and why he does what he does, because he's a fucking idiot about economics. He's a businessman, kind of, sort of, in his stupid, selling his brand way, and building a few buildings, or putting his name on a lot more buildings. But anyway, he doesn't understand the global marketplace that has been the source of Pax Americana of the world that has made the world, including us, so prosperous for 80 years. He doesn't get it. He thinks, no, they're screwing us. These foreign countries are screwing us. We got to get back at them. He just, and he's, we and the scary thing is, of course, as people have said, and it's true, that, in his first term, we thought, oh, every time the stock market went down, like with COVID, like, oh my God, the stock market's going down. We got to do something to stop this. Let's pretend it doesn't exist. Whatever. Stock market. Well, he seems, in his crazed, unhinged, but now with no longer any sane people willing to tell him the truth around him. That's the scary bit. He's not only driving the car drunk now, but there's no guy next to him like trying to steer the wheel,
Yeah. And then, there's no police force looking for him either. Like, he's just whatever wants, carte blanche, do whatever the fuck you want to do. It's
exactly.
I do want to say, I want to save some of this heat too, because I have to introduce you. It'll be quick. But so I did sort of a deep dive last night into the Spy magazine thing. There's a bunch of it's on the internet digitally. Somewhere, though, you said something to the effect of you wanted to be smart, fun, funny, and fearless. And I was like, yes, that's fucking brilliant. And where's that today?
Thank you. It was our motto, and we put up, cheap little posters all over New York when we were launching. It was our launch motto: smart, fun, funny, fearless. I agree. Thank you. I thought it was a great marketing slogan. And just the other night, my wife was saying, like, why don't the Democrats use that? Why that's it, and rather than, stupid, funny, fearless, which is the Republican slogan these days, or funny. I mean, Trump thinks he's funny, but I quite agree. And thank you for noting that.
I thought it was great. And I think the only one we have on our side is Jon Stewart. And as much as I like the Daily Show, I still think there's a smarminess that comes with listen, I'm a Northeast liberal elitist. I live in Massachusetts. But the smarminess just doesn't connect with a certain populace. And maybe it would never. Maybe our message is just so fucking the other side that it wouldn't. But
I think there's ways to do it. And I've talked and thought a lot about this the last while. And I think, again, not to blow smoke at you, but you are talking to your fellow normal working man. There's ways to do it, and one sees TikToks and videos and stuff of normal folk talking like people, and not being too smart for any room. But on our side, so it is possible. I don't know if you know this actress and amazing person called Bridget Everett. She's great, and she's a singer, and she's smutty, and she's a big woman, and she's fantastic. She had a great show on HBO for 3 years called Somebody Somewhere, and she helped create it, and it was about her, a character based very much on her living in Manhattan, Kansas, where she grew up. Now she's just a big New York body shantou. She's a she's living the elite life, but of sorts. But and my wife had this brilliant idea as we were watching the show. She said, "This is her. Give her a podcast. Make her one of the 10, 5, 10, whatever lefty Joe Rogans, of whom you can be one too." But she's dirty, but like frank, and totally like middle class, lower middle class, regular American. Anyway, I think it's possible. You just can't. Everybody can't be a Pod Save America, Washington, Harvard boy.
Yeah, and it is like there's a little bit of a PR issue on that, because I listened to your interview with Charlie Rose. I listened to you just had to sit down with Lawrence O'Donnell. Like, it's everything you guys are saying is right, and it's correct, but with the left tends to eschew the pop and circumstance that the right embraces to our own demise. We need a little, because I think they think, well, it's going to come across as disingenuous. No, it comes across as fucking interesting and engaging, and you pay attention. Like Cory Booker, what he did, that's a little nutty. We need a little nuttiness. We're
100% less caution, right? I mean, that was the problem with Kamala Harris, who I voted for, was enthusiastic about, and she was better than Joe Biden running for president for sure.
Yeah,
but a little less cautiousness, a little less. We're the good boys and girls. We play by the rules, the old rules. No, and that's the thing. And lots of people have been saying that, and it's so true. It's no longer the old rules, which doesn't mean we make up stuff or go totally crazy. But yes, stunty. Understand it's a show, and that's what Cory Booker getting up there for 24 hours and doing was. It's a show.
Yeah.
And a show where you believe something and there's meaning, and it's not just about Hail Caesar Trump. It's their ideas. They are trying to make America better rather than have vengeance and explore their various mental illnesses and ignorances in the political sphere. So yeah, no, you got to and talk normally. I see Chuck Schumer come on and talk about, well, if we get the CR, then we'll have polling results where we like, don't have these guys talking their Washingtonese. Talk normally.
Here's the fucked up thing too about the left. I almost I don't want to save some of this for the show too, but Kamala Harris was a better candidate than Biden because Biden was 150 years old. But we are not going to elect a woman of color. We simply will not. And here's the other thing. Like, AOC is doing exactly what I want the left to do, but she's a brown woman. It's never going to fly. Pete Buttigieg, perfect, but he's gay. So, like, we need to accept the rules of the game that we're playing and then work around that. Stop trying to force this shit. Just get a reasonably intelligent, articulate, funny, cool, white or black guy, and we'll win. But we seem not to fuck it. We did it with Clinton. We did it with Obama. That's all we need.
But until Obama was elected, it was impossible to elect a black guy, right? I mean, you don't know. So I don't know. I don't entirely agree with you. Now, you can go overboard and say, oh, it must be a person of color, or it must be this. No, and like elect people who will be elected.
Well, yeah. I mean, I guess that's my larger point.
And I think, I don't think it's true. I think she was the wrong black woman in 2024 to run against Trump, not because she was black or a woman. I don't think, but whatever.
I think there's a certain population of this country that will just right now, and you're right. It would have never happened with the black guy unless we put a black guy up. But the stakes seem so much higher now because now it seems like democracy versus fascism.
I hear you. I hear you. No, and I think actually, I mean, look, I mean, the Democrats nominated a white guy, Joe Biden, and not the white guy, Bernie Sanders. And perhaps that was a mistake, but I don't think. I mean, yes, there was a white liberal left that had quite a bit of influence in the Democratic Party for a few years. Has less influence now, and also is dividing, I think, smartly and correctly between. Let's be crude as people are in these kinds of conversations. The cultural left versus the economic left. Some people are both, and some people insist you have to check off every box on the card of 12 things that every Democrat must believe. And I think some lessons have been learned, and people understand that, like, people who have disagreements about trans athletes or what all these things that aren't what appeal the so-called kitchen table issues of like I want my life to be better. I want to have my kid be able to afford college. I want to have health care. All those things that are real things as opposed to the words you use or this you use. And again, I'm not saying, oh, let's throw trans people under the bus or anything. Nothing of the sort. But get elected however you can get elected. Because, as again, it's really important to say, you don't get to change things unless you have power. And the way you get power is to get elected. However that happens.
Take the W. And this is where I got very concerned about the left when it was the Bernie or bust bullshit with Hillary. It's like, no. The right knows to just take the W. A lot of them don't like Trump, but they know he's going to get in office. And then you just take the W and then you go from there. Now it got way stupider. But like this idea, and here's the other thing about the trans thing. I don't give a shit one way or the other, but it's a weird hill to die on because trans people represent 0.07% of the population. Even if you got 100% of 0.07 to vote on any particular issue, it doesn't fucking matter. Why are we and it pisses the other side off and it gets them to the booth. So it's like throwing an interception in the end zone. What the fuck are we doing?
It's 0.7, but I take your point.
Whatever it is. I mean, even if it's infinitesimal in the grand scheme of things.
Yes. No. And again, I mean, there are certain people who, would rather lose, but believe all the things they think are right and say all the things they think are right than win.
Yeah.
And it's not, again, I have this thing I say, and I really believe it firmly, which is that I'm all, if you want to be non-binary and call yourself non-binary and be non-binary, I believe that's a legit thing, and by all means do it. But I think non-binariness is an important thing in all realms of life. Ideology, you can believe this thing and you can believe this thing, you can believe this thing in between, but like the people who are most, in terms of gender preference, committed to non-binariness, and I'm, again, all for it. All for what, however you think of yourself and who you want to sleep with or don't, or what gender qualities you attribute to yourself. And if you need to want to make up different, one of the many names for whatever you are, agender, binary, that's all great, wonderful, beautiful. I'm not, anyway, do that, but do that in every way, every part of life, including ideology,
And this is the issue. This is why there's no hope for humanity. One is that we're binary creatures, and two, that we're absolutists. So there can be no gray area. And I get into this argument with libertarians all the time because I go, okay, where's this libertarian utopia that exists? It doesn't. And they go, okay, so what do you don't like the military, the police force, the highway system, the FDA, the FTC, like you just want fucking, no. And they go, no, I want my taxpayer money spent on those things. I just don't want the waste. And I go, listen, fuckface, you think any political party loves waste? You think you have a monopoly on the idea of that you don't like throwing money away? Stop with that. But here's the thing. That is their talking point, and that's the A versus B. It's never A versus B. We need to get down to H or Q or, double Z before we get to the truth, but that's not sexy.
100%. No. And, I mean, social media, 200 characters and all conversations then become 200 characters or whatever it is. It feeds that. It feeds the black and white binariness, as does, political news shows and channels, which of course didn't exist 30 years ago.
9/11, man. After 9/11, they figured out you could make money with the news, and then 24-hour news cycles.
Well, and you can make money. I mean, with media, the only way to make money with media during the, most of the 19th and most of the 20th century was have these big things, big newspapers and big TV things that everybody would watch the same ones. You did not have the technology to do this niche broadcasting and publication. And so the big bad media, when there were only 3 networks and all that, well, and they were bland, because they served everybody and everybody could come to this tent, and like we're not so different. We're all watching the same news. Well, as soon as you're not, that's the infrastructure to break it up and make everybody hate each other.
I talk about this all the time. The death of the monoculture is a lot of pluses and it has a lot of minuses, and this is one of them.
Totally.
All right, let me introduce you because then we can.
What? We're done. I'm done. I do have to actually get out of here by 6 or 5 or whatever it is. 5.
5. All right. So
you got a half an hour or so.
Yeah, we're gonna have an hour. That's more than enough. All right, you ready? Let's do this.